Good afternoon and welcome to the Pure Energy Healing Academy. Welcome to Mark Bajerski YouTube channel. Welcome to your channel. It's a very beautiful day today, guys. Very windy outside, so if you've got a kite, it's a great day. Okay, right then. The topic of conversation today, self-help, is one which is, I would say it's burned into my very psyche. And the reason why is because the topic today is, should we spank or hit our children in order to teach them how to behave and how to understand what lessons are and what to do and what not to do. Okay, so I'm going to begin with my story, and that story is of a young boy who grew up with a very beautiful and caring and loving mother, and a father who was extremely abusive. When the doorbell rang, because my father sometimes forgot his key, or when the door opened and we heard the key turn, all of us as children, I can't speak for my two brothers and sister, but I can speak for myself, my heart went into panic, and the first thing I used to think is, what have I done wrong? And is there anything that he can use against me? And I used to run in the garden. This is exactly what happened most days. Run into the garden and check the soil, that I hadn't stood in the soil when I was picking a ball up, because what happened was my father would walk around the house and look for something to use against me, and well, I'll just stick with me, to hit me with. And one of the things he used to really enjoy doing was taking a branch from the tree, making it very nice and neat in front of us all, and then getting some string, some thick rope string, and tying the rope round as a handle so he'd get a good grip so he could use it with us. And what he'd do is he'd put it on the top of a ledge so we could see the stick. That was complete abuse in its highest form. And my father was in command of 100 tanks. He was a second lieutenant, so he was used to being in command, and obviously it must have really took its toll on him. I remember asking him once if he'd ever killed somebody, and he turned to rage and says, "I used to drive a tank. What do you think?" So I think he carried a lot of abuse there as well, a lot of pain and suffering. No man should ever go to war, and I don't believe any human being, any soul, wants to kill another soul. So that said, he must have carried a huge burden of the price of the war, and that is really something that I've learned to understand. However, there was a bigger picture, and that bigger picture was the day he died. When I went to the funeral, my sister stood up and started talking about my father, and one of the things that struck home was this basically story of my father moving to England after the war, and all he ever wanted to do was have a job as being an electrician because he loved working with electronics. And he went for the first job and he was turned down, and because he was so proud and wouldn't go for another job like that, he went for a job that he could get, which was working in a factory looking at cloth. He was a finisher. Not there's anything wrong with a finisher at all, because some finishers loved their jobs, and I think that's wonderful, but my father always wanted to be an electrician. So from that moment on, can you imagine waking up every morning, having 4 children, going to work and hating every single moment of it, dreaming that he wished he could have done what he wanted to do, but he didn't have the courage to, or the common sense to go and look for that job. He just stuck with that one job because in his mindset he believed that once you've got a job, you stick with it and you don't ever let that go. So all of these things are things that I've worked out in my life by watching and listening, and then realising, because of all those things, this is why my father was abusive. Now, you may turn around and say that's still no excuse, and it probably isn't, but you can at least now understand a little bit why my father was like that and why he was so angry with his life. So he didn't come home and go to the gym and let the steam off. He used to come home and let the steam off with me, or anyway, just stick with me. So, okay, now, I've grown up and I am now 50 years old. I have two of the most amazing children in the world, Nico and China, Nico is well over 20, I think 25 now, something like that. I'm rubbish with ages. And China is about 19, 20. And I never raised or never even thought about raising a hand to my children, ever. I never needed to, okay? So, the bigger picture on this one is that I broke the mould of my father, which I'm very proud of, absolutely. And obviously his wonderful lesson to me was that to be able to see, do I want to end up like my father, or do I want to end up like my mother, who was kind and caring and loving? And of course my mother died very early at 45 of cancer of the stomach, coincidentally, where all the emotions sit. So my mother had to put up with my father beating us on a daily basis, and she digested all that suffering. After he'd finished beating us, she'd come over and cuddle us and feel that pain and suffering, and she couldn't do anything, because in them days you just couldn't, women just couldn't do anything. It's changed now. So she took all our suffering and it turned to cancer, because I believe most of us, I'm not saying every one of us, but I think most of us in life, when we suffer somebody else's weaknesses, we take that on board and it sits inside us somewhere and it eats away and turns to physical. That's my belief as a healer for the past 13 years. So that's kind of my story about beating and being punished and fear that's been pushed into us by our parents. So you were going to now ask me the question, do I believe in spanking and hitting? And people would suggest that there is a difference. A little spank doesn't hurt anybody. But I'm going to tell you something now, if you think about this, okay? You take a lovely little child, and that little child is, say, 2 years old, and you're having a conversation with a friend, and that child now goes very close to an open fire in the house, and you're having a lovely conversation, a lovely chat, and the little child goes up to the fire and sees this fire for the first time, and it's firing away, and the child sort of goes, ooh, ooh, and the child feels it's very hot, and the child knows it's not going to stick the hand in the fire because it's so hot. So the child already knows that this fire is hot, and so the child is about to then turn away, okay? Now, this is where it becomes interesting. Just as the child puts their hand to feel that heat, the mother screams and runs over and grabs the child and goes, and then panics and then sits back down. Now, at that given moment, the mother thought that she was doing the right thing, because she grabbed and pulled the child away, which is fair enough. But what happens at that very moment, the child now associates the fire with fear. So when we didn't interfere with that, the child was fine with the fire. There was no fear attached to it. The child knows this is hot. This isn't something that you want to go near. So I already gathered that, and the child would go away. No attachment of fear, but an understanding of oneself that not to put my hand in the fire. So what I'm trying to suggest to you is that we sometimes can put fear into children by reacting in a way which is our fear. So we actually put fear into our children. And I think that's one of the common reasons what a spank does. A spank puts fear into a child of whatever that child has done. And I don't think that is healthy at all. So I think you already know now what I think. I've been through the abuse all my life, and I can certainly say it didn't help me at all. It petrified me, and yeah, it affected me very badly, and it took me a long time to get over it and understand it. So what did I do? What was different? Well, I didn't really need to do too much, to be honest. I remember silly little things that my son used to do, and to be honest, I used to giggle about them. You know, if that was my father, I would have been beat left, right and centre, but I used to giggle about it. We used to giggle together, and then we'd go back into my my dear friend's post office and say, come on, take it all out, and he'd take all the sweets out, and I'd be laughing. I'd say, I'm really sorry, Paul, I don't know what's gone into him. And he was only a little tiny boy, but he just liked to put sweets in his pocket. If he's watching this now, he's going to kill me. But, you know, as kids, what do? We do these silly things, you know. But I laughed with him, you know. It was just so funny. He just to come out and Pour all these sweets out. Where did they all come from? So, yeah, we sit down and we talk about these things. And if we feel that it continues, what we would do is say, for instance, your child may have a game, or their favourite pair of shoes, pumps, or something that they love to do. We would ground them and explain that, look, if you do that, this is what happens. I'm going to have to ground you, or take your iPhone off your laptop, or your Game Boy, or whatever it is, for 2 weeks. And that teaches you that really this is what we call a reminder of what would happen if you do something that really isn't nice to other people and would affect other people. So we explain to our children why the principle is. Have you ever heard of this before? Old souls, young children, old souls, you can't tell them what to do. Impossible. So if you say, don't do it, and your child says, but why? And you say, because I said so, that doesn't wash. When you're dealing with old souls, you have to explain to them in detail. Some of you know what I'm talking about. I know you do. And you have to explain to them, and then, okay, I understand that. And then a lot of the times, our children can be older souls than us, and we think that we know what we're talking about. And actually, that our children are far more intelligent and wiser than us. And we won't say anything because actually a lot of the times we don't really have the answer to it, and we can't really give them what they actually need. So we get frustrated and say, because I said so, or we can't be bothered. And that's the bottom line. So why do we hit a child? Well, I think if you hit a child, you've lost the battle instantly. You've completely lost straight away. If you can sit down and talk to your child, which I think if you really want a child, I think it's important to sit and talk to your child. Just like if you want a dog, they're not just for Christmas. You spend time with them, you take them out, you kind of sacrifice your life and many things because that's why you got a dog, because you love them and you spend time with them and you stroke them and you have fun with them. Okay, so, a child is a little bit more than a dog, obviously, because you have to educate them. And I often say this, we often want our children to be better than us, and actually they only mimic us, so they never become better. They just watch what we do and they become us, almost. So it's us who have to improve and learn and grow stronger and be kinder and be wiser, and that way our children mimic that and become that. So sometimes our children become who we are, and actually, that's something very interesting too, but another topic. So if I were to hit my child, I know deep in my heart, like most of you guys there who have ever hit a child, will react instantly with a mechanism of backfire or doing this, and then they will justify why they did it and try their best to justify what I'm saying is wrong. That just makes them feel better from what they did, but that doesn't wash with me, because I know you inside and out, and I know that you have a beautiful heart, and I know you love your children, and I know at that very moment you were just going through a difficult situation, you were stressed, something was inside you that triggered, and you did it because it's easier, and it is never anything to do with that it's always a good thing to give a child a little spank every now and again. Sorry, doesn't wash, doesn't work with me at all. I've seen too many children suffer with that. Children are very sensitive, they really are, and do you want to give them a spank to take that sensitivity away? No, I don't think you do, and neither do I. And if you turn the picture around, turn it around, imagine that was you and it was the other way around. You didn't like being spanked, I'm sorry, no you didn't. There was fear attached to it. Therefore, my message today is this: if I can save you from the heartache and pain from spanking your child ever again, because you are affected, not your child, trust me. Yes, your children are affected, but you are affected far more. Deep down, it really affects you. I promise you it does. It does. You can say as much as you want that it didn't and it was a good thing and it was the best thing, but trust me, I feel it, I know it. So you can, I don't know, you can do what you want with that. You can, I don't know, you put nice icing all over it and put some nice cherries on it and make it sound wonderful as much as you want. But once you raise your hand, you lose instantly. You lose instantly. There is no, in my humble opinion, there's no winners at all. There's only one loser, and that's you. Your child is affected, but then again, the child will have to learn. Your child will have to learn from that and hopefully break the mold like I did with my father. So the bigger picture is always we choose our parents before we come here. So I just kind of think to myself, you know, I asked myself this question before I made this video. If I would have spanked my children, would I look back now in this moment, sat down here and be able to look at you in the eye and make this video? I would. And I'll tell you something else as well. I would be saying sorry to my children every day and asking for their forgiveness and forgiving myself and trying to figure out the reason why I did that. And once I've figured that out, I would work on myself to become a better person and heal from that very anger that I had to lift my hand up for. So that's my answer today. So that's probably 15,000 subscribers unsubscribing because they now hate me. But there are times it's good to get it off our chest. It's good to be able to share something like this with you, and the reason why I do that is because I've worked with a lot of children over 13 years and I know how they feel, and they don't tell their parents half of the things that I've talked to kids about here. Many kids, many, and it does affect them very much, but they would never tell their parents. So I know deep down. Okay guys, it was a difficult topic of conversation. It's not one that I enjoy talking about, but it is one that I think is important that we all are able to look in our mirror and say, you know what, maybe there's something that this guy says, maybe I need to look at myself a bit more and maybe not react again in that way, and maybe sit down and talk to my beautiful child and maybe confiscate something from them and do it that way and see how that works. And just give it a try, and actually if you do give it a try, it's surprising how much happier and how much more healed you become, because then you've overcome the energy of well, it is a stress, and it is a reaction, and it is a negative reaction in all forms. Okay, I think that's it really guys. I hope some of it made sense to you. Just so you know, there is no blame, there is no wrong and right, it's only something that we have to learn from and grow stronger from. So if you've learned something from this today, and you can say from today onwards that you're going to give it another try, and you're not going to, you know, use a stick, or you're not going to slap your child across the face or on the head. I'm not going to tell you something I could tell you something about. I had a client who used to come here, and they used to fight an awful lot in Fuengirola. Do you know why he used to? I mean, he was quite a big lad, and he used to knock the living daylights out of people, and he struggled to get rid of that. And do you know why he used to be? He was a lovely guy, absolutely lovely guy. I never believed he could do it. He used to come and he was all bruised all over. And do you know why he used to beat the living daylights out of people? Because somebody hit him across the head as a joke, and he'd remember his father used to hit him across the head all the time like that, and he just a flick switch, and then he just used to go crazy and beat the living daylights, even if it was his best friends. He just used to turn if somebody hit him on the head. I think what I'm trying to tell you is I have 1,000 stories like that of how abuse, or a spank, or something can affect a child for the rest of their life. Okay guys, I'm stopping now. I love you with all my heart. Have a great day guys. I'm sorry it was a heavy topic of conversation, but it can't always be light. And I think maybe if you pass this video on to somebody who you know who abuses somebody, but they don't even realise why, and that it couldn't affect them, maybe this video might help them, or maybe not. Alright guys, love you all. Have a great day. Bye.